All right, well, we're going to start up now. And just a couple of announcements, too. We've actually got a little charging station on one of the back tables back here. So if you need to plug in a cell phone or something or your laptop, feel free to use that little charging station, and you'll be able to charge up your various personal electronic devices. And we're going to get started, and we're going to talk about kind of new Pawpaw cultivars and breeding efforts now. And I'll ask everybody to sit down in the back, and we're going to get started. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to get started now. Everybody hears me clap once. Clap once. Clap twice. Clap 3 times. Just applaud yourself. All right. That's the old extension technique to use. Anyway, so we're going to get started. We're going to talk about Pawpaw cultivars and breeding efforts. And these are new Pawpaw cultivars, and it's the breeding efforts too. So we're going to have 3 very interesting talks. And one is a really interesting venture, Project Pawpaw. And I think Adam is out there. I saw him roll up earlier. Adam, are you? There he is. He's over on the other side. So we're going to have Adam come up and talk about Project Pawpaw. And I'm not sure if he has slides or not. Do you have slides? Yep. So we're going to load those up. Yep. We're good. And so please help him welcome Adam.
Hello, everyone. I got the slot right after the walking outside and eating fruit break, so you're all energetic and enthused. So my name's Adam. I run Project Pawpaw. We'll talk about what that is, some of the stuff we've been up to over the past couple of years, and what we're going to be up to in the next few years. And let's get started. So, who is this guy? I'm Adam. I'm a plant breeder. That's my training and profession. I started Project Pawpaw in 2020, and we'll talk more about what that is, but my full-time job is I'm the breeding operations manager for the Savannah Institute. That's a nonprofit doing agroforestry research. I'm an Appalachian Trail thru hiker. I'm a lifelong fruit and nut enthusiast, which is why, in addition to my full-time job as a breeding operations manager, I have a second unpaid full-time job as a pawpaw breeder. So at the Savannah Institute, I work in breeding programs, breeding hazelnuts, chestnuts, black currants, elderberries, American persimmon, mulberry, and a host of other ancillary breeding programs and germplasm collection programs. I have a degree in agriculture from Rutgers University. I have a master's in plant breeding from UW-Madison. At Rutgers, I worked in the hazelnut breeding program. And so actually you can see, like Kirk was talking about, we've got on the far side there, those are some pollination bags we use in hazelnut breeding, and those are Tyvek bags that go over the whole branch. We've got seedlings, and there's actually some trees a few years ago from crosses that I made in hazelnuts, which is one of the cool parts about plant breeding is you can see it's always growing and it's always in action, especially with woody perennials. At UW, I actually worked in beet breeding operations, so carrots, onions, and beets, breeding them for flavor and eating quality. These are just some of the beautiful beets that came out of that program. My advisor always said, people eat with their eyes. And so that was a really great way to learn about breeding for people and for consumer quality. And so it's been really great to bring that all back home to be breeding tree crops, which I love, fruit and nut crops, but breeding them for people and a host of other traits. And there's some of the chemistry stuff. While I was in grad school, I started Project Pawpaw. That's the initial sketch that kicked it all off. And that became the logo, and that became something that's really hard to talk about every facet of. There's my Appalachian Trail thru hike, which was a nice little interim. I had started all this in grad school. I went on my hike, and as soon as I finished the hike, it was the official public launch of our crowdfunding campaign. And so beautiful, pristine trees, really big trees, really small trees, but big for Pawpaw. And so when I got back, it was the official launch of Project Pawpaw. So Project Pawpaw is a crowd-funded research and breeding program dedicated. These are our main three facets of our work. We do research, breeding, and market development with a heavy emphasis on the breeding at this point. So it's crowd-funded. You hear me throw around that term quite a bit. And what is crowdfunding? Well, you may be familiar with Kickstarter or GoFundMe. Now, it's kind of like those. Those are platforms where people can pitch in a certain amount of money and that supports some sort of project or organization. It's like that, but without the fees. So through our website, and it's ongoing, is all of this work that you're going to see has been funded exclusively through the sale of t-shirts, seedlings, Hawaiian shirts, which you may have seen on a rack out there, Pawpaw merchandise. There's not a single dollar of grant funding in any of this work that you're about to see. Try as we did. Like Neil said, it's very difficult to get grant funding for this sort of work because you don't get deliverables in 3 years, and they don't want to pay for infrastructure, and breeding inherently needs orchards to be planted out. It's a game of numbers, and so I tried to get grants, I could not, and so now I sell t-shirts in sort of this deranged bake sale model of plant breeding. So here's some of the stuff. It's our online store. If you feel like you like the work that's going on here and you want to see more of it, you can go to the store, you can visit me out at the table under the tent in the vendor fair, and you'll see more of this stuff too. We also do a lot of festivals. We do the festival circuit and sell all of our wares and raise awareness. And we've done it all. Honk if you love pawpaws. So I got to go around and see a lot of really great people. I mean, the Kentucky State crew was super welcoming early on when I came around. Cliff England, all these major people, Neil, Tom Wall, they really welcomed me in and shared some of their knowledge. And if you guys remember the cool shade trial that was out at Cliff's, that's that a few years ago. And so some of the things we're focusing on. Fruit quality is really important to us. That's one of the main things we're working on. On the far side there, you see some images of fruit. And one of the things we're really working to implement in this program is high throughput phenotyping. So we want to find cheaper ways to gather data. And this was some initial prototyping efforts into using digital imagery to collect measurements on this. So it's been refined now, and it's in the process of being refined. But we can take pictures of the fruit, we can classify shape and parameters, we can look at flesh color and skin color. If you hold the fruit for different periods of time, you can quantify how it starts to brown over time. It's very easy. It's a quantifiable technology. I've also done consumer taste testing, things like that. Along the way, I got so many email questions that I had to make online guides because I could not explain to people the nuances of grafting every time. So if you go to projectpawpaw.com, under growing guides, there's pretty comprehensive guides for grafting and plant propagation, seed germination, things like that. So another side quest that happened as I was trying to raise awareness and get the crowdfunding campaign going is that I became a TikTok micro-influencer, which was strange. So I had over 2 million people watch videos about plant breeding and tree crop breeding in pawpaws, and that was a cool thing. The amount of people that actually got converted into buying a t-shirt, quite low. But I think a lot of young people learned something from it, I hope. And so, yeah, the breeding program. It's traditional plant breeding, just like Kirk was describing. It's a flower with pollen from a male flower onto a female flower. I bag them immediately before and after making the crosses. These are organza bags, so they exclude a lot of the other pollinators. Ants definitely pollinate them. I've seen them crawling around. There's also flying ants, at least in my neck of the woods, that do a lot of the pollination. Here's how I like to store the pollen. You can put your individual paintbrush in that cup there. That way, when you close it up, there's no pollen blowing around. It's not getting contaminated, and you're always using that brush for that source of pollen. Make sure you bag your flowers and make sure you label them. That's the most important part of any plant breeding operation, is good record keeping. So after you make the pollination, you grow the fruit. One of the nice things about those mesh bags is if you get a big enough bag, you can actually tie it to the branch so that when the fruit matures into a fruit, it'll fall in the bag, you don't lose it. So then you go collect those bags at the end of the season, process them into seeds, grow them out into seedlings, and then you start to plant them out in your orchards and assess them. Plant breeding is a numbers game. It's all about having enough numbers. The apple people will tell you that for every trait they want to select for, it takes about 1,000 trees. Now, the apple people have money and resources and established grower groups, which hopefully we can get there someday. We can make a growers group and start to have revenue and check off dollars, things like that. But for now, it's a numbers game and there's not a whole lot of money for it. So you're going to see some of the thrifty ways that we've been working to get our numbers up. Here's an example of a very cherry-picked example of some wild fruit versus domesticated fruit. You can really see that just a few cycles of domestication can make a huge difference in fruit size and quality, and it really makes you excited for what's going to happen in the generations to come. There's huge variation in shape, flavor, all the things we've been talking about, skin thickness, flavor obviously, polyphenol oxidase. So as the fruit gets older, the same thing that makes your apple turn brown, polyphenol oxidase, after you cut it, is in the skin of the pawpaws, and that's what's causing the pawpaw to turn brown. And American consumers do not like brown fruit. So what we've luckily found is that there is variation in polyphenol oxidase activity, and we have to work to find ways to quantify that cost effectively. But that's definitely something to be interested in terms of how long can your fruit sit on a shelf and still be sellable. Here's some of that color break stuff that Kirk was talking about. These are 3 different trees. These are 3 perfectly ripe fruit, same stage of ripeness, completely different hues and colors. And the one with the yellowish skin, that's more of the color break. The challenge I found is that it has not been consistent. It's only on where the sun is hitting the fruit you'll get the color break. I still can't find the one that turns yellow inside the tree. So if you have that, let us know and we'll work it in. Here's some of the trees actually at Kentucky State. So this is what you can grow your seedlings into and eventually evaluate. You're still looking at things like vigor, and I think the term that I like to use is actually yield partitioning. So it's not just vigor. Of course, you want something vigorous and healthy that is not going to get disease, it's not stressed and sick all the time, but you want it to make fruit as well, and you want it to put a lot of its energy into fruit, not just vigorous growth, because if you're doing an orchard system where you have to prune, eventually growth equals cost. So traditional phenotypic selection, traditional plant breeding, that's what we're doing right now, is you are collecting data on the plants and you're using that to make selections. So you're growing the seedlings into trees, looking at the fruit, finding the traits you like, and then using that to make decisions about what you cross in the future. It works really well with shorter cycle crops, vegetables, fruits, like strawberries, corn, things that are quick, where you can get 1 generation or 2 generations per year. It's really tough with perennial crops that take 5 to 7 years to mature. It's not, you guys ready for your plant breeding lesson? So this is the breeder's equation. It's a very famous plant breeding equation, and essentially that distills down to the amount of gain you can make is a function of how many plants you have, how stringently you're picking the best ones, and how good you are at evaluating which ones are the best, and then you look at that over time. And so there's all these different factors, but one of the biggest things you can do to increase the rate of genetic gain is to reduce the years per cycle. And there's a few ways you can do that. One of the ways, if you look at chestnuts, that they've been able to do that is take a tree that normally takes 5 years or 3 years to flower and get it down to 10 months through super high intensity LED light growing. So if we can figure things out like that with Pawpaw, and then when you have your selections you'd like to make crosses between, you can dramatically accelerate the rate with which they flower. You can also try and skip seed stratification and buy yourself 3 months there if you can find a chemical treatment to make the seeds germinate without stratifying in the winter. Of course, those are high-tech solutions. The lower-tech solution is the top-work graft. So here you can see that is a scion that I top-work grafted onto some mature trees, and what I'm pointing to is that scion the next year, and that's a tremendous amount of growth, and that's what happens when you have established root systems with which you can graft onto. Incidentally, those are actually the trees from the seeds out of the very first pawpaw fruit I ever ate when I was 11. And that's when all of this started. And obviously, this is my second unpaid full-time job, so this happens at night a lot of the time. You can also improve your selection intensity, and I really don't have time to talk about genomic selection right now, but if you guys wanted to learn all about genomic selection and GWAS, we can do the whole primer course on genetics later. What I'm really here to talk about is the Research Orchard Network, and that's what I've really been spending a lot of time on the past few years, is to develop a network of research orchards all around the country. You'll notice I didn't say where I'm based because I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and that's where I'm based. But this organization is based all over the country, and it's constantly expanding. So we've been planting research orchards exclusively for research and plant breeding with fruit as an added benefit. Here's the orchard network as it currently is or will be. The first one was planted last year, in 2024, in southern New Jersey. It's a rootstock orchard, and we'll do pictures of that later. The next one, so that was 750 trees in New Jersey. The next one was planted this spring in Wisconsin. That's a cold hardiness breeding trial. And the next one will be in eastern Georgia at a location to be announced, and maybe the people may or may not be in this room with us right now. The New Jersey orchard that's a farmer collaborator model. So the farmer there is a good friend of mine now, and he has a vegetable farm, family vegetable farm. It's been row cropped for 100 years, 75 at least. And so he is a young farmer interested in sustainable agriculture, and he is giving us land to grow this orchard on. And in exchange, as we grow it, he'll be able to sell fruit out of the breeding orchard, Project Pawpaw. We've paid for the orchard and have established it. In exchange, we get to trial things there. We get to graft onto that orchard. We get to use that for data collection and research. These are 750 trees to be used as rootstocks. They're actually, those trees I showed you are all from the same fruit, the very first fruit I ever ate. There were 5 trees from the same fruit, and these are bulked open pollinated seeds from those trees. So they're actually quite inbred, which means they're relatively consistent for rootstock. And so it's designed for research and plant breeding. These are really tight planted orchards. There's 12 foot between rows, 5 foot in row, because we're looking to trial a lot of things quickly. And if it's not good, it gets cut down and something good gets put in its place, or, well, depending on the context. Here's some soil data, it's sandy loam. It's been in vegetables for a long time. The first orchard we did with 30-inch paperboard tubes and fiberglass tomato stakes. We use black woven ground cover and irrigation, and that is just to help with weed control. You'll see pictures in a moment. So they'll all be top worked eventually, just like what I showed you in the years to come after they're established. And then we'll do the named varieties, the most commercially available named varieties we can find, which I had estimated at about 100, but it keep being more. So when we decide on a subset, we'll graft them in triplicate. We'll also do unreplicated accessions from controlled crosses that I've been making, and we'll also have a geographically diverse group. And this is the experimental design. It's called a partially replicated design. That way we can assess field gradients. But the goal here is to have a very diverse population in New Jersey that we can then use to do some genetic studies and improve the rate of breeding. Here's David Lubick, the collaborator with the great truck. Here we are together. We were actually college roommates. And here's some of the prep. So we use the plastic mulch layer to lay the black woven ground fabric. There it is right after it's been laid. We measured that with a very high-tech piece of technology. That is a sponge on a wheel with a 5-foot circumference. Great way to lay out an orchard, actually. We burned holes in it with a modified weed burner torch. That hole was the exact size that an auger fits down into, so we augered holes. I had I bulked these seedlings and grown them in crates. They were bare roots. So we put them in buckets with a mycorrhizal inoculant and put them in. We used paperboard tree protectors. So this is the same material that a milk carton is made out of. It's 95% paper, 5% plastic, very thin plastic film. They're very affordable. They're quick to install. And we actually, in the previous year, we did a little trial and see what worked. We tried the paperboard ones. We tried the clear Tree Pro tubes, and we tried these cages with fabric. Well, that's just not possible to do any more than like 10. So we went with the paperboard because they worked well and they were cheap and they didn't make a bunch of plastic waste. The issue was they didn't hold up very well, and by the end of the season, they were starting to melt, and we actually had to replace a few of them. So for that reason, we don't recommend them in wet climates, and if you have a drier climate, it helps. Also, if you're able to keep the weed growth around it to a minimum, the weeds trap moisture against it. Here we are planting. It's a big planting party. It's a lot of fun. That's my girlfriend. She puts up with all of this, and now has some sort of Stockholm syndrome thing going on where she likes it. So, got her. Here's David with the plants, and that's what some of the plants look like now. That's the orchard, 750 trees, and here I am with it. The Wisconsin one was planted this spring. I'm moving quick. We're almost out of time. This land was actually rented by Project Pawpaw, not a farmer-collaborator arrangement. 750 seedling trees from the famous Jerry Lehman orchard to be evaluated for cold hardiness. 250 trees that are in a tree tube trial to make informed recommendations for northern establishment, and it's designed for plant breeding. This is a challenging place. It's a cold place. These are some of the temperatures from this winter, and just 7 miles down the road is Lone Rock, Wisconsin, which you may not be familiar with, but in 1951, it was the coldest temperature ever recorded in the continental US at negative 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is where you breed for cold hardiness. Same tight spacing on a nice silt loam. We ended up using the Tree Pro, the clear plastic tubes, because we knew they were going to be on over the winter to help with survival. Black woven ground cover. There's some fertility and cover crop information. Had a GPS to lay this one out. So nice, good, prepared. There's the plastic mulch layer. There's the woven ground cover fabric. Here's our rows, laid nice and straight. Here's our planting party. That's the real key to all of this, is you have to make it fun. For the cost of a few pizzas, you can get an orchard planted and all the materials. So there it is, right after planting on a beautiful sunset. Here's what the plant material was. It was 12 to 16-inch tree-tubed seedlings from the Lehman orchard that I grew. And here's where they are now. The tallest one is 53 inches. This was planted at the end of May, by the way. So the tallest one is 53 inches. 56% of them are poking out of the top of the 30-inch tubes. So I was very surprised. They really loved Wisconsin and this soil context and everything. There's some overhead pictures, and there's some more pictures. So the tree tubing trial, going quickly, I did the paperboard tree protectors along with 30-inch, 48-inch, 60-inch tubes and no tubes. That's the big thing. When you guys do trials, you have to include controls, things that will die. And it's very difficult for orchardists to know that 50 of your trees are going to die, but this is research. So we put in ones that will probably die over the winter because they don't have tubes. There's paperboard. There's the Tree Pros. That's no tube. These were bare root seedlings planted. If you're going to put any number of Tree Pro tubes on, this is the way to do it. You cut the bottom out of a bucket, and that allows you to pre-bend them. Then you can put the reusable zip ties right through them. And since we're in the dairy state, we got a heavy milk theme. So these are actually made of recycled milk jugs, milk cartons and milk jugs. And then I timed how long it takes to install them. It's actually quite linear. The taller the tube, the more time it takes, and I'll have an economic analysis, including the time it takes to do weed management, pull the tube up, and all of that, to be disclosed at a future date. There it is. Okay, and the last one will be in eastern Georgia. More information to come. 750 trees, just like the New Jersey one, farmer-collaborator agreement to be used as rootstock. And there's the same stuff. We're using white woven ground cover in this one. And we're still deciding if we're going to do tree protection at all, because I think it gets really hot in those tubes. So I'm interested in learning from some of you southern folks about what you recommend. And so what are the benefits of the orchard network? It gives you multi-environment trialing of existing cultivars. Like we talked about, what does well where, and how can we actually make benchmark comparisons of them? And the important thing, as with the rootstock question, you have to have more than one replicate in these places. And if you average out with a large enough number, you can ignore the rootstock effect. This gives us a chance to preserve germplasm in different parts of the country that's more resilient. What if a flood takes out one of these orchards that has all, the one place that has all this material? It's really important to have this in multiple sites and to be able to distribute disease-free scion. And when you have a new release, that's amazing. You need a lot more scion quickly. This is going to be a source of mature trees that we can graft onto quickly and multiply scion, which is one of the major bottlenecks in this. And eventually we can partner and make this into a training population to develop some genetic tools to make things faster. So you can learn more about that at projectpawpaw.com/orchards. Pawpaws are cool. There's great images. That's the rate of increase of pawpaw festivals. They're all over. I'm on the news. They're in Croatia. And you're going to hear about that later. And I met some great people, including all of you. And send me good trees or buy a t-shirt. Thanks, everyone.